Hello, church. This is Dennis Sanders, the pastor of First Christian Church of St. Paul, located in Roseville, Minnesota, and this is the weekly check-in. So, I want to start with a question. Why do you go to worship? Why does worship matter? When I was a kid, we would go down every so often on vacation to Louisiana to visit my dad's relatives. They lived in central Louisiana. We'd be there for maybe about 2 weeks or so. And of course, that meant being there on a Sunday. And it was always fascinating being there. This was the late 1970s, early 1980s. And you would find a lot of things were closed or had very limited hours. This was kind of maybe the tail end of what was called the Blue Laws that would really regulate whether and how things were open or not on a Sunday. But, I didn't have to go very far to see how things were treated on Sunday. Back in Michigan, where I'm from, there was a certain supermarket. If I was on a Sunday where I wasn't at church or was out early, I would notice that if you go by the area where there was the beer, the drapes were pulled down. And that was a sign. It was basically part of a law in Michigan that you couldn't sell alcohol until noon on Sundays. So the message back then was that Sundays were a special day and they were for worship, and the culture responded appropriately. Now, times have changed. Stores and everything are open whatever hours they choose on a Sunday, and people have other things to do on a Sunday. Sometimes people will especially take their kids. Their kids are involved in sports. Sports usually happens on a Sunday. So people are busy. And if you believe, I remember reading somewhere that the average churchgoer now goes a little over a Sunday a month. So in this changed climate where it's not a given that people are going to be going to church, we have to ask, why is worship important? Why does it matter that we go to church maybe more than one Sunday a month? I can't talk about anyone else, but I can talk about why it matters to me. Because I think worship is an important way that I can connect to God and to others. Yeah, it's easy in the busyness of our lives to not feel so connected. We're just much more busier people. We don't always have time to really form friendships the way that we used to. And worship is a way that I can actually connect with someone else. And also with God. I really savor the time of pastoral prayer on a Sunday, not because I want to do the prayer. It's not because I love to hear myself talk, but it's because I am fascinated by hearing other people share of their lives, what matters to them. Maybe it's a loved one that they feel that needs prayer or something that's going on in their own life. This is a way that we hear what's going on and we give all of these concerns to the God of the universe. We're able in this time to connect to God. Worship reminds me that God is present. And yes, God is present beyond Sunday morning and beyond the church. But it is at this time in the week I'm reminded that God is alive and that God is present in our world. It reminds me that God isn't a concept, as some people say, or that it's my voice, but an echo, but just in a louder voice. But it's that the God of the universe cares for us. And we are reminded every Sunday that God of the universe became one of us to bring us all salvation. A fellow pastor reminded me that worship is a spiritual discipline, just like reading the Bible on a regular basis or praying on a regular basis. Christianity at its root is about relationship, and it's about a relationship with the God of the universe. And that can only be done by regular practice. Hebrews 10:24 and 25 says, "And let us consider how to provoke one another to love and to good deeds, not neglecting to meet together as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching." Worship is a way of finding out how to spur each other to grow in faith, and that only happens when we meet. And I think that being connected to a community of faith is so vital these days. One of the fascinating things that has been, I found out, someone who follows politics, is that in the 2016 presidential election, one of the things that was found out was that many of the people who were followers or supported former President Donald Trump were people who didn't go to church. They may have believed in God, or they said they believed in God, but they weren't part of a faith community. And I think that that matters. It is quite common, especially in our society that is becoming much more fragmented, especially for people who are working class, to not have these kind of important institutions such as church. In many cases among the working class, regular church attendance almost doesn't exist. And what we learn is that the importance of how important worship is in that it has consequences in our public policy. Because people who go to church tend to be much more friendly towards immigrants than those that don't. Now, I'm not trying to be partisan here. I'm just trying to point out that there are concerns about what it means to not be a part of a faith community. So I want to end this by asking that question again. Why do you go to worship? Or if you haven't been to church in a while, why don't you go to worship? If you do go to worship, and if you come to worship, whether it's here at First Christian, in person or online, or another congregation, think about why you come to church. And then take part fully in the singing of the songs, and in the preaching of the word, and in the prayers. And realize this, that an hour with God and with others doesn't just change your life. It can change the world. Take care, everyone. Godspeed.